In 1996, a group of U.S. policy intellectuals wrote a memo for Benjamin Netanyahu called A Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm. And it advocates taking down regional rivals, starting with Iraq and extending to Syria and beyond. And a few years later, retired General Wesley Clark says he saw a Pentagon memo after 9/11.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the joint staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, "You remember that?" He said, "Sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you."
I'm sorry, what did you say his name was?
I'm not going to give you his name.
So go through the countries again.
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia and Sudan, and then back to Iran.
Okay. So the timeline slipped, but the countries line up with the wars and covert operations we actually watched unfold. Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria. Now we're watching it unfold in Lebanon and in Iran. And in the background of the bombs and sanctions, another pattern: central banks reorganized, oil contracts written, sovereign debt restructured with firms like Rothschilds and Company, sometimes standing by to advise. So when you see Jeffrey Epstein writing to Ehud Barak, hopefully someone suggests getting authorization now for Iran, while representing a Rothschild bank and coaching an ex-prime minister on how to tap Rothschild money for a cyber weapons venture, it starts to feel less like a random email and more like a window into how this world actually works. On February 28th of 2026, the same day the U.S. and Israel escalate into full-scale war with Iran, Nathaniel Rothschild posts this on X: "History is written by the winners, Iran Revolution 2026. Now look at that timing. Look at that hashtag. The heir to one of the most powerful banking dynasties on earth tags Iran Revolution 2026 and reminds everyone that history is written by the winners. The winners have certainly been the Rothschilds financially throughout centuries now. And maybe that's just bravado, maybe it's just commentary, or maybe it's exactly what it sounds like. A man whose family helped invent modern war finance and funded Israel into existence. He's now watching another chapter of that story unfold in real time. So here's the question. When a convicted sex offender can email Rothschild, a former prime minister of Israel, a future Rothschild, a U.S. president's lawyer, and say things like, "I represent the Rothschilds," and hopefully someone suggests getting authorization now for Iran, whose world are we actually living in? Is this just a coincidence of rich people knowing rich people? Or are we getting a rare, unfiltered glimpse into the true deep state? A shadowy banking network that's been making a killing off killing and writing the story since the days of Hessian mercenaries and Napoleon.